My pleasure to introduce our Congressman. You know, I don't know that we've ever had such a well-qualified gentleman to serve as the Congressman for the 2nd District. French Hill certainly grew up in Pulaski County. I think one of his great accomplishments is that he became an Eagle Scout. He graduated from Catholic High, raised his family, has been a small businessman, has served our government, served in the administration of President H.W. Bush, and served with a great United States Senator, a man that I certainly would look up to, John Tower. And it's always a pleasure to have our Congressman, French Hill, here. Give him a round.
Move the mic on up. Well, what Doyle says is true, because when John Tower became the United States Senator after Lyndon Johnson became Vice President, it was an open primary. There were over 30 candidates running for the Senate. And Tower was a little-known professor of political science at the Midwestern University in Wichita Falls, Texas. And they had to come up with some sort of spiel, stick out on the stump. It was kind of a boring, history for political science professor. And his dad was a Methodist preacher, traveling Methodist preacher, so he knew every song, so he was good at the hymn on the stump. But his mantra was, "My name is Tower, and I don't." So I don't know how you can use that, Doyle, but everybody up here is on great socks, by the way. Something like Bush 41 has been handing out socks up here. Well, thank you, Steve Luggs, for the invitation. It's great to be with everybody here, and John Boozman and I are delighted to be with you tonight. And I'm particularly honored to serve with our senior senator, John Boozman. He is an outstanding Arkansan and a great member of the upper body, as they like to be referred to it. He's one of the younger members over in the Senate. And I kind of think of it, it's kind of like when you're out campaigning and going to the rest home, you can slip over there and see what they've got for lunch over there. We passed some 300 bills this year, and I think they've taken up, I don't know, 1, 2, something like that. But I thought I'd make a few opening comments. John's going to do the same thing, and then maybe we'll take your questions together, and we'll see if we can outdo, Bill O'Reilly or one of the traveling shows for Q&A. When I was over in Hot Springs at our summer meeting, I talked about the good, the bad, and the ugly. And that's really how in my first 9 months in the Congress, how I've tried to look at things every day as I categorize what's going on in the Congress and also in the federal government. And for the good, I think the most important thing that we've done, bar none, in the House and the Senate, and the House and Senate have taken unmitigated abuse in the public and in the news media. But there's one thing that the Republican Senate and the Republican House did this year that's outstanding, is they passed their balanced budget resolution. That's the first time that's happened since 2001. Democrat leadership in the Senate and the House never do that. They never pursued a budget committee operation, a balanced budget. They never pursued the appropriations process. And so when you have that balanced budget resolution in both the House and Senate approved, that allows you to do budget reconciliation, which is how we have a shot at defunding Planned Parenthood, rolling back the taxes and mandates in Obamacare. Those bills were marked up in the House last week. You didn't hear about that on the nightly news because too many people are worried about the Speaker of the House sensational news instead of focusing on the work that's being done in the House. And so those bills are going to come up for a vote, and it's an opportunity for us to send a bill down to the White House and have the President decide if he's going to veto that or not, because it only takes 51 votes over in the Senate. The next thing I think that's outstanding that's happened this year is the fact that the House of Representatives has completed work on all 12 of the appropriations bills. We've passed 6 on the floor, and we've passed all 12 in committee. It's the fastest time since the Budget Act was passed in 1974 that the House got to their work. It bogged down right before the August recess because the Democrats want to bust the spending caps in the sequester, and they want to have a fight over Confederate symbols. And as a result, the appropriation process, the third week of July, ground to a halt in the House. When you hear on television, well, the House needs to use the power of the purse. I ask every radio host and every TV person that says that to me, well, what does that mean? Because I'm convinced they have no idea what that means. The power of the purse is the appropriations process. And if we don't pass the appropriations bills in the House and in the Senate and send those down to the President to veto or not veto, we're not exercising the power of the purse. And it is not a unilateral power of the House. As everyone here knows, to control spending, you have to pass a bill and have that bill enacted into law. And so I think the House has done a great job on these appropriations bills. It handles everything in here I get bailed on. It talks about Planned Parenthood. It talks about EPA overreach. It talks about amnesty proposals down at the Department of Homeland Security. If we don't pass them, we don't get any of those things. But that is a positive, that we've gotten that kind of work done in the House. Trade policy. I worked very hard. I'm a large supporter of the Trade Promotion Authority, TPA, which is, how the Congress governs how a president can negotiate a trade treaty, any trade treaty. Every president since FDR has had trade promotion authority or something like it. And we could barely get that through the Congress, but I'm pleased to say that passed. And for me, that was a victory, not for Barack Obama, but a victory for the United States, for our belief and our foundation of economic policy that includes a belief in free trade. Those are good. Bad, and I'll be quick. This president has the lowest number of vetoes since Chester Arthur was president. Chester Arthur was president in the 1880s, and Obama has the lowest number of vetoes. So that's a good thing that he didn't have a lot of vetoes. That means we're not doing our job down on Capitol Hill. We're not sending him things. And that's something that I put in my bad category, because we should be more productive in the House and Senate working together and send the president more things to veto. Well, he's getting ready to move up the ranks, because just this week he issued 3 veto threats. And I have them in the good category, because they're 3 great bills. Number one, we've passed a defense authorization bill in this country every year for 53 years. And this guy is going to veto, as said last week, the defense authorization bill contains all the spending necessary for national security. And John's a big part of that in the appropriations process. Why? Because he wants to close it up. You know, I was down there about 3 weeks ago. I can't think of a better place to put the guy who blew up the USS Cole, the people who helped plot 9/11, and some of the worst, murderous people in the world. It's a great place for them. They've got a little cage they can play soccer in. They've got great federal penitentiary quality rooms and food. It's a thing of beauty. And there is no reason for those people to come to the United States. But that's what the president, why he may veto the defense spending measure. He has proposed to veto a bill also that I've worked hard on this year, and that's to lift the ban on crude oil exports, which maybe we can talk more about. So I think it's great he's going to put these veto threats out there, because these are absolutely the kind of bills that will defend our country and boost our economy and show us clearly how out of touch this president is on national security affairs and on economic policy. And finally, and I'll conclude, the ugly category. Back in the summer, when I spoke at the summer meeting, I had Iran in that category. Iran has not moved up out of the category. This president has made a critical foreign policy error in the nuclear arrangement with Iran. And all Iran has done is thumb their nose in the face of the U.S. and our allies. They have conducted a ballistic missile test in the last 24 hours. Not supposed to be able to do that. Obama says he's going to go complain to the UN. I mean, come on. What's happened in Syria is 100% in the hands of this president. And no matter how many people advise it on the Hill, in our own military, or in our own diplomatic corps to handle it differently, he has rejected those claims. And as a result, we have 50% of the Syrian population homeless in camps in Turkey and Jordan, trying to make their way to Western Europe. And we have 250,000 people who have been murdered by the Assad regime using chemical weapons, dropping barrel bombs into schools and hospitals and neighborhoods. And what Assad has not attacked, ISIS has. I also put something recently on my ugly list, which is the National Labor Relations Board, a great creation of post-World War II economic policy. But Obama has taken it to a new level by declaring recently that franchisees are not independent businesses, but in fact are part of their corporate franchisor arrangement and therefore have none of the protections of a small business as it relates to unionization or wage and hour type rules. So there's a lot of work to do out there in order for us as Republicans to not just hold the line on this president's bad policies, but to talk about aspiration, opportunity, and get this economy growing again. That's what John Boozman wants, that's what I want, and that's what the Republican majority is trying to do in the House and the Senate. I promise you, we vote every week for it. And I hope that as we develop our new leader in the House, a new speaker, that you'll be able to hear that message communicated in a loud and clear way in the face of our critics, both from the left and from the right. And I fully subscribe, as I've started my return to my public career, that, you know, just like Teddy Roosevelt said at the famous Sorbonne speech, it's not the critic that counts. And let me tell you something. Out in social media land, there are plenty of critics.
Yes, sir.
And it's not the critic that counts. That's what President Roosevelt talked about. It is the man or woman in the arena doing the work on behalf of the American people to make sure that we get the kind of country that we can keep, grow, nurture, and that we deserve. And so it's an honor for me to be with you tonight, and it's an honor for me to serve in the 2nd Congressional District, and I appreciate the invitation.
Let me give you a little factoid here. People ask me all the time, how's the Republican Party doing? Well, you're living in a time in which we have 75 Republican county chairmen. We have 75 Republican county committees, one in every county of the state. We actually have a candidate running in Chico County, and 2 years ago we couldn't even find an election commissioner in Chico County. We have a county committee of 18. We have 150 election commissioners, and 75 of those are chairmen of their election commissions. So give yourselves a round of applause for helping accomplish that. I say that to say this. When I was elected chairman in December of 2008, only Congressman John Boozman and myself were available to speak at Lincoln Day dinners. There were no other federally elected officials, with minorities in the House and the Senate, no statewide elected officials. And so I know that year I spoke at 24 Lincoln Day dinners around the state. And I know you shared in most all of those. So one of the goals of Senator Boozman was to get to the point where he didn't have to speak at 24 Lincoln Day dinners again. Although he loves people, you know, I had the good fortune of serving with his brother, Fay, in the state Senate. And so I know Senator Boozman because of Fay. Fay was just like he is, a man that took time with people, who truly cared about people. You felt like when you were visiting with Fay and with Senator Boozman that you had their sole attention, and that if you have an issue, it was their issue to take care of. We're so blessed to have a man who knows himself to be a public servant, that knows himself to be blessed by God, to be a blessing to others. And let's make our great Senator John Boozman welcome and Saline.
Thank you guys, it really is an honor to be with you tonight. First of all, I want to thank all of you that have made this possible. As someone who has been to many, many dinners, I gauge these things really by two things, the food and the fellowship, and both were outstanding tonight. The other thing is I know the effort that it takes to get these things together, so I want to thank you for doing that, especially those of you that were on the host committee and did such an outstanding job. Now, when I decided to run for Congress, I went and visited with John Paul Hammerschmidt. I tell this story all the time because it's really important. And I said, look, you know, tell me about the job and stuff. You know, what's the deal? And he said, well, the real joy in the job is that you get to help a lot of people. You can use the power of the office for good. I worked hard at doing that. French works hard at doing that. The entire Arkansas delegation works really hard to do that. But as we left, he said, John, always remember that the backbone of the Republican Party is the Republican women. And so I do want to thank you all. Again, as we go through the serving lines and look and see how all this is done, like I say, you all play such a major part. I told that several years ago. I've got a wife, 3 daughters. Usually my wife is with me. It's harder to get her out. I've got 2 little granddaughters now, a 4-month-old and a 3-year-old. And so she's in demand at home. But I said, Kathy, you know, as we were leaving, Kathy looked at me and said, John, they're not only the backbone of the party, but the brains. The other thing I want to do really quickly, and then I'm going to get French up here, and what I'd like to do is really answer your questions. I know you're curious about what's going on in Washington. We can tell you the things that we feel like are important, but I do want to hammer on the things that you feel like are important. But I also want to thank all of you elected officials, our state legislators, ASA. You all are not doing a good job, you're doing a great job. And it's so important. You know, it's hard to govern. You know, it is very, very hard for government. You know, we take that for granted. We've worked hard. We've got ourselves in a position. You know, that we are the majority party now, and yet we're acting like we're doing a tremendous job in that regard. The other folks here at the county, the city level, thank you so much for all that you do. Again, you know, you take good governance for granted. And it's very, very difficult, especially at the local level, and nobody's doing a better job than you all here. It's an honor to work with French. Dave Camp, the former chairman of the Ways and Means Committee, I was visiting with him and grabbed him. I said, look, you know, this guy's running, you know, for Congress, and he's such an outstanding congressman and things. And Dave looked at me and basically said, he's great. I read his resume. It's kind of like, you know, the only problem is he's almost too good, you know, when he's around me. So French is not doing a good job. He's doing a tremendous job. You know, we hear a lot about the rancor, you know, in Congress, and there is a lot of rancor. I'm a guy that likes history. And so Thomas Hart Benton, you know, Benton is named after Thomas Hart Benton. He's also, Benton County is named after him too. And Bentonville, Arkansas is named after him. And Doyle and I were talking about this. Our state, he was a great expansionist. He wanted the country to grow. And so our state came in when Michigan came in at the same time. Now, again, we talk about rancor, but Thomas Hart Benton, the story is that he was on the Senate floor discussing the compromise of 1850. And he was duking it out. He was duking it out with a Mississippi senator named Foote. And they were going back and forth. And finally, Thomas Hart Benton got so mad that he charged Senator Foote from Mississippi. Senator Foote pulls out a Derringer and is getting ready to shoot him. And a bunch of guys jumped on him and put the gun away and things. So we got a lot of rancor, but we're not quite in that situation. Although there's times when I'd like to get my Derringer out and shoot somebody, or at least charge them. Let me just talk about a couple of things. It's interesting that French mentioned because we hadn't really visited about it. But the Iran deal is a bad deal. And I'm going to talk about it. You're going to get sick of hearing me talk about it. We're going to do all that we can, because I feel like that as time goes by, in fact, we're already seeing, as French mentioned it, is that the deal is going to be broken. The Iranians have always broken every deal they've been in. And so again, we're going to need to react to that. We're going to need to respond and make it such that we don't enforce it. But it is a bad deal. And the reason that it's so important is it's about nuclear war for your children and your grandchildren. If Iran goes nuclear, Saudi Arabia will go nuclear, Turkey will go nuclear, Egypt will go nuclear, UAE will go nuclear. I've been in these countries, they've been in my office, and told me point blank, they're scared to death of the Persians. The Persians have traditionally, throughout their history, they've just hammered home on these folks. And so you're going to have nuclear proliferation throughout the Middle East. There's four things that are really bad about it. First of all, it doesn't prevent Iran from becoming nuclear, because all it does is it pushes it out so that it takes about 10 years. If they keep the agreement, after 10 years, then they can start pursuing nuclear weapons and really convert over fairly quickly. Obama's hope is that in the next 10 years, the West and the Iranians are going to cuddle up to each other, and the Iranians are going to start acting responsible, and they'll join the world community, which is a pipe dream. It's simply not going to happen, especially when you look at what they're doing now and really just thumbing their nose at us. The other problem is it gives them $100 to $150 billion so that they can use that money to foment terrorism. They're the leading cause of terrorism in the world. Everybody agrees with that. And so as a result, they're going to use those dollars, at least a good percentage of those dollars, to pursue causing trouble in the Middle East. The other problem we've got is these side deals. Nobody really knows what's in those. It's even said that in the side deals, it allows the Iranians in some situations to have self-verification, which makes no sense at all. And then lastly, it allows them to go ahead and start acquiring conventional weapons. And so what we're doing is we started out with the idea that under no circumstances were the Iranians going to have nuclear weapons. Now, after 10 years, we're actually legitimizing this thing. So again, it's a bad deal. The other thing I'd like to mention is Syria and the refugees. And that's a huge crisis. And, you see the pictures. With all that's going on now, with the Russians now in Syria, bombing, with the Iranians moving in there now, boots on the ground type situation, we're going to have more refugees. I'm not in favor of bringing Syrian refugees, in mass numbers to the United States. That's not the answer. But it is a very serious situation. What I'd like to see is, and McCain has talked about this and others, is a safe zone set up in Syria, a no-fly area, where they can be made safe. We can take care of them then. The rest of the world can chip in and help out in that regard. But again, they don't need to be shipped in mass here, and they're not going to be. You have to, you've got to get approval through appropriations, but also in the last 2 years, how many Syrians would you think have been able to come over? Yes.
10,000.
10,000? Anybody else got Gosh, this isn't fun. Okay, 1,500. The reason being is that they really are, up to this point, and we're going to, I'm going to work my hardest. French is going to work his hardest. Tom Cotton's doing an outstanding job on this issue. They really are adhering to the fact that these are potentially dangerous people, that ISIS has said, that they're going to send people in. So they really are checking out backgrounds. And so over the past 2 years, about 1,500. So, that's kind of where we're at, and it really is an important issue. The other thing I'd like to say very quickly, we're going to do the Q&A, and we're going to talk about some problems that we've got. I think the other thing that we have to remember is that we truly are the greatest, freest country the world has ever known. I'd like to tell a story about being at the prayer breakfast several years ago, and there was a gentleman that spoke, a guy named Ward Brent. And Ward is a type AAA personality. He's just a regular guy. He's a guy like so many of you that had, a moderately sized business. He worked very, very hard to be a successful businessman. Actually, he worked a little bit too hard at the expense of his family. So he was in church one day, and he went to church not because, the spiritual side of things. He thought it would be good to be in church, to be seen, have his family there that they needed it, but he didn't really need it. So he's sitting in church, and after church, he gets up and he leaves, and the preacher grabs him, and he how you shake hands with your pastor and tell him you did a good job and things like that as you leave. Well, the pastor cornered him and said, "Ward, we're going to Africa. Will you go with us?" And Ward looked at him and said, "No." And just, started to walk off. So the preacher grabbed him and he said, "Well, will you pray about it?" And Ward looked at him and said, thought for a second, he said, "No, that's what we pay you to do." And he just leaves. So he got to feeling bad about that, and the preacher followed up and he reluctantly agreed to go to Africa. And so he's at the airport, and they're getting ready to go through the security, and he said that several ladies appeared. He said the only way to describe them would be as church ladies. And they came and asked if they could say a prayer for them, before they left. So, the pastor said, "Sure, that's wonderful." So the ladies said, "Well, let's hold hands and pray." So Ward's standing in the middle of the airport, holding hands with his prayer ladies. He said that he was praying harder than he ever prayed in his life, that none of his friends would see him standing in the middle of the airport with the church ladies. So he gets on the plane, goes over there, and really had a great experience. Just saw, that there was, lots of stuff going on in the world. They were in Africa, probably Tanzania, and just saw the need and things. And Ward, Ward is not he didn't know a whole lot about Africa, but he knew how to do business. He was a businessman. He was an entrepreneur. And one of the great things that's happened as a result of people like Ward Brent and others in the United States stepping in, getting people out of grinding poverty, is introducing them to forms of capitalism. And so he started some little businesses over there, put the Africans to work. And in Africa, you're either very, very rich, you're very, very wealthy, or you don't have anything. They don't have any middle class. And so the people that could afford it, they charged. The others, they didn't. And as a result, those that they charged were able to, they hired Africans. And again, it is a self-sustaining business. It's made a huge difference. He went back, he said that he went back, on several occasions, but he was back a couple of years later. And this was when the AIDS epidemic was just really raging. We can be very, very proud. The person that really stepped in to help with that was President Bush. And he, did an initiative, and they jumped in there. I asked Henry Hyde about it, the great congressman that was head of the Foreign Affairs Committee in the House for many, many years. I said, "Henry, tell me what's going on. Do we need to be involved? Is this a good thing or not?" And he said, John, the reality is if we don't step in and do something, that this will be like a Stephen King novel, that you'll have whole villages, and this actually occurred, where you'd have whole villages where there weren't any adults, there weren't any, people that had passed puberty. You just had kids, running around. So he was there, and he went through a village, and he saw a young lady that was dying of AIDS. Her husband had died not too long previous to that. And so, he visits with her, kind of stabilizes things, moves on, comes back, and a week or so later, and in that time frame, she died, leaving 3 or 4 kids. And in Africa, there is no social safety net. I mean, you're in big trouble, if you're an orphan in that situation, especially then when things were so bad. So he took care of the kids, made arrangements, provided some funds, so they would be taken care of, and then moved out of the village. But as they were moving on, and later in the day, the driver that had been driving around, for the last week or two, looked at him. He said, Mr. Brent, you're from America. What do you pray for? Meaning that we were so blessed. This driver couldn't imagine, because of our abundance, what we would even be able to pray for. Of course, I'm sitting at the prayer breakfast thinking about the things I've been praying about, and really wasn't very pleased with that. So we really are blessed. We're the greatest, freest country the world has ever known. But it really has come at a price. This wasn't given to us. Hard work for so many, our veterans, people in uniform now, we're at war. But also just the hard-working people, the spirit that we have in our country. Not only of working hard for ourselves, but working hard for others. So we have to respect that. And the election's coming up soon. It'll be here before we know it. These things seem to get, earlier and earlier, but before we know it, it'll be time. So all of us are called to do different things. French and I are working really hard. The delegation's working really hard. Again, you're going to be called to make some calls. Some of you are able to help financially, do all of those things. And that's just whatever's laid on your heart. But it is something we are going to have to rise to the equation. We desperately need a new president. We desperately need a president and a Congress that's going to restrict the size of government, restrict the spending, and get us back on track. Now, French and I will be glad to answer any questions, easy questions that you get. Okay. Who wants to start? This is your chance to grab us by the throat. Yes, ma'am.
I have more of a comment than a question.
Sure.
I had the opportunity to visit you two at the Capitol about 3 months ago, talking to you two about gainful employment. And I had the opportunity to meet with congressmen and senators from everywhere. In fact, I met with 32. And when I say that, I really only met with a couple. Everyone else sent their staff, except you two. And I wanted to thank you for that. You guys were very genuine, you were very thoughtful, and both of you gave me a lot of time out of your day, and I just really appreciate that.
Well, thank you so much. The other side of that is I want to thank you, because French and I deal with a lot of different issues. And the issue, that you came about, came and talked, and again, talking to us about the importance. I get mail, I get form letters, you get personal emails and things, so there's a ranking. If somebody takes the time to sit down and write me an email, then I really do look at those things. If you take time to call, somebody charts that call and things. But there really isn't any substitute, either here in Arkansas or in Washington, for somebody to sit down, take the time to talk to their congressman or the staff and just say, look, John, this is really important. This is the reason why. So thank you for coming up and doing that.
It's old news, but have you ever considered taking Pat Hayes to court for what he did in the dirtiest campaign
I'm a future guy, not a past guy. Yeah, I'm focused on what we need to be doing in this country, and so is Senator Boozman. And we're just completely committed to it. And there's so much good that goes on that we can do. I mean, and something we both have campaigned on, it gets to start it up again here shortly. I mean, you know, we need more people working in this country. We have the lowest business formation rate since Jimmy Carter was president. There are, I think, at least 3, it might be 4 of the 7 counties in the 2nd Congressional District where we have fewer people working today than there were in July of '07. So, you know, I'm not going to trivialize kind of the important work we need to be doing on behalf of the American people by worrying about the past. We have got to get the policies right in this country. We have borrowed since 2000, between 2000 and 2014, we've borrowed $4 trillion more than GDP grew during that period. Can't do that. And so these are tough, we have tough challenges ahead of us, but we're both committed to taking those on. And because we've got to get this economy rolling big time. That's to me job number one. It allows you to pay for clean air and pay for Pell Grants that people want, and pay for a national security apparatus that we need to protect this country. And there's no second mission that's as important as that.
I would just echo that. You know, I think one of the probably the greatest challenges that we've got, the greatest threat is overregulation. And it doesn't matter, and French is truly an expert in this, it doesn't matter if it's Dodd-Frank, where we have a situation where we're losing community banks right and left. I don't know when the last time a community bank was actually formed. We've had one this year, you know. And so as a result of that, you know, small business is the backbone of our country, but the community bank is the backbone of small business. My brother and I started out, and we were in a situation where we got through at the same time. I'm an eye doctor by training. He was an ophthalmologist, a surgeon. We started together and went down to the local banker and made our case. We didn't have any money, but we had an education. He liked us. He took a chance on us. He did call me, you know, to say, John, later in the afternoon, isn't there anything we can do to get you to a positive net worth? And so we worked that out. But he was able to take a chance. And now we're in situations where you have to check all the boxes, and I don't think we would be able to make that loan right now. And if we went around the room right now, you know, and had you give your story, most of you all started out like my brother and I. That's what America's all about. So these are huge issues that certainly, you know, we just simply have to fix.
Question, please. It's my understanding that the Import-Export Bank is there's going to be a vote on that pretty soon, and I was wondering, Frank, what your opinion is on that. Do you support it?
Yeah, so the Senate has passed the Import-Export Bank, and it's attached to a highway bill that's still pending in the House. So it's there. And then there's a discharge petition that's circulated, and as of Friday, I think it had already 218 votes for it. And that is a discharge petition allows you to bring down a bill that's been filed in committee but not been heard by a committee and bring it to the floor for a vote. And that could be scheduled sometime between now and the end of October. And I think maybe 50 Republicans signed the discharge petition on the Exim Bank. You know, my inclination right now is to not support that legislation because I don't think it contains the reforms in it that are necessary for something like Exim to be effective. Our delegation is, I think, probably split on this issue. But one thing that's for certain is that it will, in my view, impact jobs because we have all these 60 countries that offer export credit assistance. And there are many, many bids for contract around the world that require a country to use their export credit agency. So it's a contentious issue, it really is. And one that I think members will be, I think you'll see the Congress pretty evenly divided on that if it comes, actually does come up for a vote.
We had a vote to strip it out with the highway bill, and I voted to strip it out, as did Senator Cotton. It'll be interesting, I guess the bill will have to come to the floor because of this maneuver that's going on. And then it is our language, so can they strip it out and somehow, will there be a conference committee, or will the Senate have to repass it, or?
I think what's been done is the bill that was filed in committee, waited in committee, and then discharge petition was filed on it is the Senate language. So it would not go to conference committee, it would be accepted in the Senate.
Two more questions.
Yeah. Yes, sir.
Yeah. How did this Iran deal happen? I thought that Congress was supposed to have some sort of approval vote to allow that to happen, but it didn't seem that took place. And like President Obama has done so often, he has just taken his pen and made things happen. How did that happen?
If you want to talk about Corker for a minute. Go ahead. Okay. So, President, many arms-related agreements are not treaties. And if you remember, in the early process, Senator Corker from Tennessee proposed a Congressional Review Act in order to let the House and Senate review the agreement for 60 days. And Tom Cotton voted against that because he felt like Obama should have submitted it as a treaty. Well, he didn't. So there's nothing that Congress can do about that. So the Corker legislation passed, and the Senate voted on it, and it was 2 votes, shy of 60, something like that. Just shy of enough to have blocked or had a rejection vote in the Senate. And over in the House, we took the position that Obama had not submitted the the agreement and all the documents, including what Senator Boozman referenced, which are the side agreements between the IAEA and the government of Iran. They were not submitted on July 19th, which was a statutory obligation the President had. So we set up a different process to vote no. We did vote no, overwhelmingly voted no, not to support it, by saying that the President did not submit, was not in compliance with this Corker Act. All that sort of inside baseball. The bottom line is this agreement is not going to stand. And the reason I make that statement is the agreement is in violation of federal law. We put the Quds Force, the Iranian Revolutionary Guard, all the Iranian banks, and the Iranian Central Bank back into what's called SWIFT, which is the International Wire Transfer System. We put them back into the global free trade environment. This was what the President agreed to. And that, the minute we find them financing Hezbollah, Hamas, shipping money to the Houthis in Yemen, or running a drug ring in South America, we, in accordance with the Patriot Act, are going to interdict that. Well, according to this Iranian agreement the President has signed, that's in violation of the agreement. Next, President Bush, when President Bush put enough sanction pressure on Libya, big time, they agreed to give up all nuclear weapons. They were all removed from the country, dismantled, taken away, and disposed of. And as a part of that, President Bush also said, you will play every claim adjudicated in federal court of someone who's been harmed or murdered by your terrorist actions in the past 30 years. There are 85 cases that have been adjudicated in federal court in the United States of America. 85. To the tune of $45 billion in claims against the Iranians for the murder of the Marines in Beirut, the explosion at Khobar Towers, 30 years of misery caused by these murderers, and Obama never even brought it up. And so the House has passed a bill and sent to the Senate, and I really do hope it's one that Senator McConnell can get brought up, and I'd urge you and Senator Cotton to help that along. It says we will not release the sanctions or unfreeze the money in our institutions until Iran pays those claims to these families that were.
I agree with you, and every Republican in the Senate agreed that this certainly did, if anything, rises to the level of a treaty, it would be this, because of its far-reaching implications, as I talked about earlier. The problem was the president said, no, this is not a treaty. And so Bob Corker was faced with a decision. We could have thrown a bill out there. It might have passed or it might not, saying it was a treaty. The president would have vetoed it for sure. We would have needed 67 votes to go forward. We simply didn't have those. So what he did was, with that prospect, he crafted a deal with the ranking member on Foreign Affairs in the Senate and said, we're going to have this motion of disapproval. And most people, as we went into the break, if we had that vote right then, we would have had the motion of disapproval. The only question then, before we went home for recess, was, did we have the votes to actually have enough votes to override it? Because this motion of disapproval to set it up, we got 99 votes to do it, okay? But then we had the August break. President Obama twisted arms, used all of the political clout that he had, and as a result, we only were able to get 58 votes to go forward. So we simply didn't have enough to defeat the filibuster. Which again, here this is something that's so very important. The idea of filibustering this and not getting an up and down vote on this kind of thing, especially when they essentially voted for it earlier, again, just shows the level of support, rallying around the president, doing anything they could to prop him up with a very, very bad deal.
Thank you. Last question.
Yes, sir. And one more.
I was wondering why the third time Social Security recipients are not getting a raise, and I heard that it had to do with the drop in the price of oil. Is that correct?
To be honest, I don't know exactly yet. Do you know go ahead.
I'm not going to give you the question was for the, I think, third fiscal year in a row, Social Security recipients are not getting a cost of living increase, I think was the question. And it's the formula, and the reason that the contribution to the formula why it's so low is the price of retail gas in the CPI calculation is contributing, is what they say is a major contributor to why there's no increase proposed. And that's all. I've now exhausted my knowledge.
But it does, the formula itself does need to be looked at. The healthcare is not even included. So many people on Medicare, are paying the copay. That cost isn't even figured in there. And some of you are experiencing these tremendous increases in drug costs and things like that, paying such significantly, increased cost with, drugs that you might have paid half as much, literally, a year ago for. And that's something that we have to deal with too. We simply have to get the problem of the drug cost under control. But certainly, as we do this formula, healthcare cost needs to be figured in, because for many Social Security recipients, that's a major cost of what's going on. We put people in all of these crazy situations. I had a little lady in Berryville, Arkansas. This lady was 80 years old. This was a few years ago. And she was in this group home that was very, very nice. It was assisted living, and it wasn't fancy at all. But the people that lived there loved it. And to get that population to agree on anything that they actually absolutely loved is difficult to do. They loved the facility. So she's there. She goes to the doctor. Like I said, she's 80 years old. Doesn't want anything from anybody. She goes to the doctor, and they write her prescription. She developed some thyroid problems or something. But it was going to be another $50 or $60 a month, and she simply didn't have the money. So she went down to Walmart and, applied to become a greeter. And was going to become a greeter, and like I said, she didn't want anything from anybody. So she goes through the process, and then she finds out that if she becomes the greeter at Walmart, so she can buy her medicine, then she's over the threshold for staying in the home. That she's in. So those are the kind of things that we simply have to get worked out. As I say, we put people in these catch-22 situations that are simply inappropriate and just a major thing.